mother and a grandmother and a cancer survivor and a retired addiction counselor. I am also a convicted criminal for what I did on January the 6th, 2021. Thank you for having me back to the Capitol today. I am deeply grateful for this chance to try to make amends and talk about what happened 5 years ago. Once I got away from the mega cult and started educating myself about January the 6th, I knew what I did was wrong. I pleaded guilty to my crimes because I did the crime. I received due process, and the DOJ was not weaponized against me. When Donald Trump pardoned us, I rejected the pardon. Accepting that pardon would be lying about what happened on January the 6th. I am guilty, and I own that guilt. 5 years ago, I traveled from Idaho to D.C. to see Donald Trump speak. I had fallen for the president's lies, just like many of his supporters. Local people had welcomed me into the circle when I was around them. I heard them saying things like, the Democrats are trying to turn this into a communist country, or the radical left wants to do away with our Constitution. The gaslighting caused a lot of fear, and I was scared. With that fear in my heart, I came here on January the 6th. I went from Trump's speech to the Capitol because I thought Mr. Trump would go to the Capitol with us. I heard people saying that Trump was going to walk down to the Capitol, so I went. Well, as you know, Donald Trump never showed. But the rioters did, and the attack began. The police officers were the heroes. They protected the Capitol and everyone inside the Capitol, and even people like me. I was trampled on by the rioters. And if it weren't for the Capitol Police helping me that day, I might have died. To the Capitol Police officers sitting, if I may address you for a minute. I am truly sorry from the bottom of my heart for being part of the mob that put you and so many officers in danger. I want the Capitol Police to know how truly grateful I am to them and how deeply sorry I am. I can't believe people are still disrespecting you and trying to lie about January the 6th. I will do everything I can to stop the lies about our brave officers like you who protected us during the attack. Thank you. Speaking about January the 6th has caused a great risk to my personal safety. I have been doxxed online, harassed, and physically assaulted. But I am here, and I don't care. I won't let it stop me. I can't sit here while Mr. Trump and others are lying. I also want others who feel like me to know that we must stop the lies.
That was Pamela Hemphill. And for a while, maybe about a year after I heard about her case, because her original court filing from DC was filed in May of 2022, and I pulled the document. It's probably what I'm going to do with these sober takes, is look at these documents. But when I heard about her, and I heard about how she refused to accept the pardon, I was like, respect, right? And so that's what I wanted to make this sober take about, right? Like, we all, in this time, we have, very decisive, well, really a lot of, I said decisive, divisive, a lot of division among us. There's a lot of things politically going on there. People who disagree, people who don't disagree, whatever. I will never forget watching January 6th happen in real time while I was watching the certification, and the capital, pomp and circumstance that we do after every election. And it was very interesting to see this whole thing transpire. I remember texting my friends and being like, is that a mob? So, because I was confused. I was texting my homegirls in the group chat like, wait, what is happening? This feels like a movie. It felt like a movie. So before we get into this, let's be clear what this episode is and what it isn't. This isn't a debate about January 6th, okay? That is not even worth having a conversation about. That was definitely embarrassing. Like, it was embarrassing. Y'all showed y'all ass. This episode is also not a political argument. It's not about like rewriting history based on my feelings about it or your feelings about it. We can't go back and we can't change that. It was a disgusting moment in U.S. history, but it happened. But this episode is about this court document regarding the United States versus Pamela Anne Hemphill, specifically a federal sentencing memorandum that came out, and what it tells us about how accountability actually works inside the justice system. Because sentencing memos aren't written to persuade the public. They're written to persuade a judge using the evidence, the timelines, the defendant's own words. And so today, I'm not speculating. I mean, I shout out to Pamela Hemphill. I actually got a little emotional with her holding herself accountable and also acknowledging that she was in a cult and she made a mistake. Right. And even back when he was issuing the pardons and they were like, oh, there's one person, this one older lady who's not accepting a pardon. I was like, huh? And I didn't know her name. So today we're going to talk about that. We're not going to moralize it. We're just going to focus on the record. This is this sober take. OK. We had a lot going on at that time. Right. And this sentencing memorandum for the January 6th case illustrates how, federal prosecutors evaluate individual responsibility in a mass event. And Pamela Anne Hemphill is an Idaho resident. She pled guilty to misdemeanor charge of parading, demonstrating, or picketing in the U.S. Capitol. And on paper, the offense is nonviolent, but the government's filing argues that the context and the conduct matter more than however we want to label it. Because according to the memo, Hemphill breached police lines protecting the Capitol 3 separate times. She encouraged other rioters to enter restricted areas and ultimately entered the Capitol building through the East Rotunda doors while alarms were sounding and visible signs of forced entry were present. And after being escorted by law enforcement, she remained on Capitol grounds for an extended period of time. She was filming and she was engaging with other rioters. I mean, again, just thinking about all of this and being like, damn, just watching those people break the windows and watching those people play around in the Capitol. I was like, wait a minute, because for so long we've held that ground so sacred in American politics. And it says, quote, the government requests that this court sentence Pamela Anne Hemphill to 60 days incarceration, 36 months probation, 60 hours of community service, and $500 restitution. Slap on the wrist, right? Slap on the wrist. The United States Capitol was a violent attack, right? And this was also an attack that was used to interrupt the certification of an electoral process, a legal process. And this also threatened the peaceful transfer of power, which we know at the time that President Trump did not mind interrupting that. And what I liked about what she said too was that she expected presidential support, which has always been the overarching question, was whether or not Trump actually incited the riot. Now, you may know, and I highly suggest you go back to my Jack Smith episode, you may know that there is no assumption that there was, in his past election interference with the Mueller report, and even more interference with the 2020 election by actually forcibly trying to prohibit a process that he disagreed with. And this honestly goes to show the personality, the lengths this man is willing to take, which also to me speaks to his sexual proclivities. Because, I likes it and I wants it and I'm going to take it, right? That's his vibe. Look what he's doing in Venezuela. And the document also states that she pled guilty to one count. And she violated the parading, demonstrating, and picketing in the Capitol building. That was a sentence of 60 days imprisonment with probation to follow. And they felt like it was appropriate in this case because, quote, the defendant deliberately pushed through police lines. There were more than enough signs for her to stop, and she didn't. The defendant encouraged other rioters to overrun the police line. The defendant entered and remained in the rotunda. So then she stayed there, despite the fact that there was broken glass, there were broken windows, and there was an audible alarm. And again, which she says at the end of the video, you also had Capitol officers that were trying to prohibit them from going any further, which when baby girl got shot, what was her name? Ashley Babbitt. I think her name was Ashley Babbitt. She was shot because she was attempting to climb through a broken window that was leading to the speaker's lobby, a secured area just outside the House chamber. And the shooter was who? A U.S. Capitol Police officer assigned to protect members of Congress. The officers had barricaded the hallway. The lawmakers were being forcibly evacuated from the area. And Babbitt was like, fuck y'all. It was legally justified in the end. There were no charges, of course. But that's towards the end of Hemphill's statement. You see where she is basically like, thank you for protecting me that day. And sometimes because of the pandemic, January 6th is such a blur. We know that it happened. We were dealing with a pandemic. We were dealing with the happiness of Biden being elected. And then to see that happen, it was like, I have never seen anything like this before in my life. What is this? You all just got mad about the George Floyd protests. And this is what we're doing, right? You got mad because BLM was in the streets trying to keep, police officers from killing us. But then you all stormed the Capitol, and these people, a great deal of some of the people that were there that we found out later were like police officers and officials and all types of people. Now back to the document. This document highlights that she had prior involvement in the August 2020 Idaho State House breach. And that told the prosecutors that she has a pattern of behavior. This wasn't just a single lapse in judgment. She's done this before. She had social media posts. There were video evidence that cited those claims that she actively encouraged others to occupy government buildings and she minimized her own responsibility afterwards. Now she's what? Being doxxed. Now she's what? Feeling the heat of being even involved in all this with no real political support other than that whack ass pardon. And most of those people that were pardoned, they ended up getting in their own shenanigans. I mean, who was it? The shaman? I think it was like the shaman. He ended up being pardoned and he got into his own situation. There was somebody else too, and I can't remember who it was off the bat. But there were a lot of those guys that ended up getting off, and after they, ended up getting pardoned, they were still pieces of shit. They didn't have a come to Jesus moment after that. And when the FBI interviewed Hemphill, she claimed that she was pushed into the Capitol and portrayed herself as a victim of the crowd. Statements the government says are contradicting based on her own recordings. And what I always think is interesting about that is the energy of being in a crowd that large. I get it's like being at a concert. It's like, oh, we all vibing, we all this, we all that, right? And you like, I'm just going with the flow. Like swag surfing, come on, it's rap, right? And I think that's kind of how these sorts of things happen. The individual murmurings of the crowd is powerful because you got all of this support. I got my niggas behind me. Like, we doing this, ride or die, right? And prosecutors argued that her lack of remorse, combined with her encouragement of others and the repeated breaches of the police lines, placed her and her conduct on a more serious end of a misdemeanor. But ultimately, the government gave her 60 days of incarceration, followed by probation and community service. And again, kudos to her. I appreciate the fact that she could sit in front of a camera and don't get me wrong, I'm not too naive where I'm like, well, shit, if I was being doxxed, I wouldn't give a fuck if it was Democratic or Republican. I would want some people behind me. Because again, she needs support. and so I'm touched by her statement, but at the same time, she's now an enemy of them and she's going to need support from the other side. She needs empathy from us as well. And January 6th prosecutions, while, explaining why prosecutors believe jail time is warranted, they charged her, for what they charged her for, a light sentence. They were like, she deserves a misdemeanor, but, It's interesting how the federal system assesses culpability and credibility and consequence, because when it comes to J6, I can't help but think if this was a bunch of black people doing this for fucking Obama, would I be having this conversation with you about how this woman was even offered a pardon, or how this woman had such a light sentence for parading, demonstrating, or picketing at the Capitol? 60 days in jail, followed by probation and restitution. $500? So in early 2025 of last year, Donald Trump pardoned her and many of the J6 defendants. And Hemphill, of course, rejected hers. She just said, like she said in that video, I don't deserve it. I did what I did. She stated publicly that she felt accepting the pardon would deny her responsibility of the role. She was balls deep in the fact that, no, hell no, I did that shit and I did that shit on purpose. And the energy she had at the time was like, and I'd do it again. But she also worked with her U.S. Senator to have a refusal formally acknowledged by the Justice Department. And Hemphill was publicly reiterating remorse at some point, her actions at the Capitol after being influenced by false claims of the 2020 election. These people were easily manipulated. Some of them were flat out stupid. You know, I'm always feel that way. But at least she acknowledges that she made a mistake. She does not feel like this should be excused. She's reflected on her behavior. That's obvious. She's connected it to broader patterns of her activism, if you want to call it that, in the past, and says she believes that refusing the pardon was freeing because it left her record unchanged rather than, quote unquote, whitewashing her conduct. Now, with this 2026 public address, she's doubling down on that apology. And I respect that. I can't act like I don't accept that. So she served a sentence. Her probation is completed. Her pardon was offered in 2025. She refused it. She still has a conviction on her record. She's not pardoned. And she's being honest about what she did. Her case is unusual. She is only one of few. The January 6 participants who actively refused a presidential pardon. But yeah. And you know, those motherfuckers don't want to acknowledge any wrongdoing in anything that's going on. They moved the goalpost like a mug. They are the type, sky's blue. No, it's not. It's yellow. It's blue. I can prove it to you. Okay. Show me. Hold up a blue sign. What color is this? It's blue. Oh, okay. What color is the sky? Same color? No, it's still yellow. That's how they move. Because at some point you have to convince yourself that one, you look stupid. And two, you have to convince yourself that everything that you've been doing is right. And you have to stay. There is that point of no return where it's like, it's too late to turn back now. I can't really say that I didn't do it, but I can't really say that I regret doing any of this because I've come too far. They reached that point of no return. Hemphill's online in 2020 talking about it's a war. In the court filing, there's her Facebook post. It's not going to be a fun Trump rally that is planned for January 6th. It's a war. The fight for America is real. Show up. I don't want to hear your excuses. We have no second chances. If millions and millions, and I mean millions, show up, we may have a chance. Find a way, and a gif of Trump underneath. Another post. Happy New Year. On my way to Washington, D.C., January 6th. And it is her holding the biggest fucking gun I have ever seen in my life. His gun is big as hell. Not to mention the effort. She flew to DC from Idaho. She attended the outdoor event at DC. She filmed her interactions. She could be heard telling people in the crowd, let's do this. Let's go to the Capitol. We did it, Boise. She was storming at that time in 2020 as well. She was, January 6th was in 2021. I always get that confused. But in 2020, that August, she was storming the Idaho State House by protesters of COVID-19 restrictions. And that also resulted in breaking a glass door and protesters pushing back past law enforcement and entering the gallery. And she videoed the incident as well. She give a fuck. There's a video that they cite where she says, we broke the glass door. Watch the video. I'm with the people. Writes Amon Bundy. Who the fuck? I don't know who that is. I'm going to have to look that up. But later in the video, Hemphill said, and I'm going to the Capitol. Occupy the Capitol. Don't worry, Trump's coming in office. They really thought that they had that man's support. That's what's so fucking crazy to me. They really thought this man is a vehement liar. So you got this poor woman, Hemphill, who has fallen for the okie doke, drank the Kool-Aid. Then the other January 6th, they had 1,200 plus people charged in connection with January 6th. These cases span across 50 states, all 50. They range from misdemeanors to felonies because, of course, they were assaulting, officers and obstructing and, engaging in seditious conspiracy. And this is considered the largest federal investigation in U.S. history. There were the currently incarcerated people, which, no disrespect, but a lot of times the motherfuckers be dangerous as soon as they get out of jail. Some of them remain in federal prison. They were convicted of assaulting law enforcement. Those weren't short stays. But then there was the largest group, which served time and then they were released. Some got sentenced to days and months. Some got sentenced over a year. And some remain on supervised release. Then there were the people who got probation. No prison time, which is what she got. She did do a little bit of time, but not real prison time. They got probation, home confinement, community service. And then there are some cases that are still pending and awaiting trial or in plea negotiations. And, they weren't all let go. They were all violent, in my opinion, but they technically weren't, and she wasn't. But to me, if you are ultimately putting the battery in everybody's back, you're culpable. The same way Trump is, because at the end of the day, Trump incited this. He made this worse. He made this bigger and worse. It's kind of like when you're a big content creator and you tag someone knowing you're following, and all of a sudden that following starts getting dogpiled on and they start getting doxxed and all this other shit starts happening. That was your responsibility to keep your followers safe. Now, mind you, everybody's grown. Everybody's grown. It's their decision to choose to harass people based on a parasocial relationship that they have with someone on social media. But at the same time, Trump was well aware of his influence. That's why he went to that little whack ass rally. That's why he went down there. And that's also why he unleashed his bulldogs on everybody and went somewhere else to go watch it on TV. And so kudos to Patricia Hemphill for holding herself accountable. Motherfuckers they're not going to have too much sympathy for her because it is what it is. But at the end of the day, those are the little mini changes that you need to shift people. Sometimes people have to make the mistakes. They got to fuck up, and then they have to feel the consequences of what that fuck up feels like. You don't get to do whatever the fuck you want. You don't get to aren't we supposed to be the country of law and order? You don't get to just be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna just bust into this Capitol building, bypass all the security and expect not to be shot. I was actually surprised that Ashley Babbitt was really the only person other than the, of course, Capitol officer to die. Because I guarantee you if it was a bunch of black people, it would have been a bunch of dead black people by January 7th. We would be tallying bodies right now. I'm not trying to be a dick, but just saying. So again, kudos to, Patricia Hemphill. When people ask, where are the January 6th offenders, there is no dramatic answer. They're kind of all over the place. But at the end of the day, not all of them is going to do the type of shit that she did. And while some are in prison, some serve time, some on probation, a few of them are still moving through the courts, this will not be erased. You know, the justice system didn't deliver a single sweeping outcome for everybody, which is what I felt like they deserve. I don't give a fuck what the level is, what you did. You're a part of the broader picture. But what the justice system did do is it delivered individual ones based on their conduct, the law, and whatever evidence they had, you know, finding them in pictures, piecing together social media. How implicated were you? To me, you bust through that building, you ended up in the building, you going to jail. You're going to jail because you weren't supposed to be in the building. So if you were somebody who ain't on no visitor log and you ended up in that building, you going to jail. Just saying. All right. This is my sober take on this. I'm not going to say my blood pressure's getting high. I'll see you all on the pod. I got another episode coming in 2 weeks. Peace.